Babies, how we doing? So I just want to go through quickly second tutorial on how to use this PHET simulation. So today is going to be focusing on the different components that we have and how to measure things. So the one thing I talked about how you can use the different components and all that, but what I have here is just a very simple circuit created with a battery, 2 wires, and a bulb. Within these labs, you're going to be asked to maybe make some changes to these things or measure things. So when we measure things, what we're going to use anytime to measure is we're going to use these meters on the side. So you have the voltmeter, which is going to use to measure voltage, and the ammeter used to measure current. When I take the voltmeter, you have what are called leads. So the red wire here, this is called the red lead, and this is called the black lead. So say I want to measure the voltage across the battery. The reason why there's 2 leads is that in any circuit, we're going to have a positive part and a negative part of the circuit. So take, for example, a battery. Let me just disconnect this real quick. So battery has a positive terminal and a negative terminal. Everything that we have in here is going to have 2 endpoints, okay? The red lead is always going to be attached to the positive endpoint, and the black lead is going to be attached to the negative endpoint. When I do that, the multimeter is set to measure the voltage across that component. In this case, would be 9 volts, okay? If I wanted to measure the voltage across, let's say, the wire or the bulb, I would need to first make sure these things are actually connected. But again, this wire here would have an endpoint there and an endpoint there. So if I want to measure its current, what I want to do is take the red lead and attach it to the part of the wire that's connected to the positive of the battery. So that would be there. And then I'm going to take the black lead and attach it to the other endpoint there. Notice that this endpoint, if I follow it through the bulb, would be connected to the negative. And you'll notice here, the voltage across that wire is 0. And I can do that for any component that I want. And that's something we're going to do throughout this chapter on current electricity is talk about measuring voltage. All right, so that's using the voltmeter. Second thing I want to go through is how to measure current. Okay, current, you'll notice that when I bring this one out, it doesn't have any leads, but we have 2 endpoints, okay? The reason why this has 2 endpoints is to measure current, it acts kind of like a turnstile, that in order to measure the current, it's got to be placed within the circuit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break my circuit and create a gap, and I'm going to place my 2 endpoints of my multimeter, my ammeter, I'm sorry here, and I'm going to connect those 2, and you'll see that if I connect it correctly, the bulb should light up and everything should work as normal. Why I say it's like a turnstile is that this is going to measure the amount of charge that's going through it in a certain amount of time, and that's what current is. So this would measure the current here of 0.90 amps. All right, so this is how I can measure things. Another thing I kind of just did here is that as you're doing this, you might need to modify some things. So how do I make changes to these? So if you click, for example, on the battery, if I click on the battery itself, notice down here brings up some options that I can actually change the voltage of this battery. I can make it bigger. I can make it smaller, take it all the way away. Standard voltage that we're going to have with these batteries is going to be about 9 volts. Okay, so based on our measurements, we're going to have that. This button, I can invert the battery, okay, or I can take and completely delete that component. If I click on the wire, I'm not really going to be able to do anything there. If I click on the bulbs, it's going to be able to change its resistance. So as I click on the individual components, I am able to change some of these things within the individual components. Okay, so throughout this, I might ask you guys to measure things, make changes to some of the things or some of the components within the circuit. So quick little introduction on how to do so. Hopefully you guys can play around with that and figure it out on your own.